Actually, two problems with my presentation, so I thought it is better to admit that in the up front. One is I love speaking. Second is I very rarely get a chance to speak uninterrupted for 10 minutes. And the third is that I have too much to say. Now, the good part is that I have a conscience. I can see from the dais that probably quite a few of you are feeling very sleepy. The lights are dimmed. You had a good lunch. So with the permission of the chairperson, I'm going to take 1 minute of my time allotted to me to do a small exercise. I'm going to request all the audience to stand up, please. Yeah. Now the people on the dais, they can keep standing. I know they've been sitting for a long time. And the people who are there on the audience side, you have to do a small exercise. You have to take a round of your table clockwise and come back to the same seat where you were sitting earlier. Please. Thank you so much. The reason I carried out this exercise was that there was a nice person who once mentioned that it is practically impossible to stay awake when you are sitting in the same position, same chair, and you're looking at the same screen, and there are people dying to, fill you up with information. And since I'm going to be there on your side tomorrow, and I was there on your side in the morning session, I thought it is my duty to actually give you that respite. So going on with the presentation, I'm going to try and finish it up in 6 minutes and leave a minute extra for each of the distinguished panel members who are going to be there after me. We all know that solid waste is a problem in India. We also know that the reason it is a problem in India is because, one, we are generating too much waste. We have a huge population. And the other is that, a lot of us know how to manage solid waste, but some of the people who are there, who are managing the solid waste, either they do not have any idea as to how to manage solid waste, or they have an idea and they actually do not know how to implement that idea. So what I'm going to be speaking about is how do we assess the environmental impacts from different solid waste management options. One of the ways to do this is that, we wait for a certain facility to be in place and we actually do the monitoring of the various emissions. Now we know that most of the scientific facilities are not existing as of now. And I want to know now as to how the facilities should be planned. How much of waste should be going where? So how do I go about assessing what is likely to be the environmental burden of a particular waste option? Now we all know that there is a hierarchy. The more I reuse, the less is the environmental burden. The more I recycle, the less is the environmental burden. But it is not possible to reuse 100%. It is not possible to recycle 100%. And we know that though only the 30% of waste should be going to the landfill, we actually have practically 60 to 70% of the waste going to the landfills. So what I have tried telling here is that there are certain impacts and there are ways to actually assess these impacts without actual monitoring of the various facilities. How many of you know about global warming? Okay, that's very encouraging. Okay, doesn't matter, it is better to be honest. Global warming is, something which is a very buzzword. It rained in Delhi a week back and everybody said it is because of global warming. Suddenly you feel hot during the day and people say it is global warming. In fact, the joke was that, one day we did not have any electricity and my son said, Mama, is it because of global warming? So everything is actually because of global warming. But actually it is the increase in Earth's temperature because of the greenhouse gases. How many of you know what eutrophication is? Okay. It is something which we see as the green algal bloom in the surface water bodies. How many of you know what acidification potential is? Yes, I know, but sir, nobody is raising the hand. Okay. So I'm presuming everybody knows. I'm presuming everybody knows what photooxidant formation potential is. And this, I'm sure everybody knows, human toxicological potential. So what we do is that when we decide how to assess the environmental impacts, we first established a system boundary. We know what are the feasible technical options in a city. We list down those options. We demarcate a boundary. We know that these are the options for which land will be available, which are going to be technically feasible based on the waste composition. We also establish an outside boundary for inputs which are going to be there in the system, because we are going to require electricity for managing these facilities. We are going to also be generating electricity at certain places. We are going to be using diesel. So all that actually comes in the secondary boundary. Then we have to start with certain assumptions, because if we make very elaborate data requirement, one, the system is going to be very, very tedious. Second, I will actually spend a couple of years just looking for the data. So one of the assumptions which we can make is, because we are basically trying to assess, and most of the electricity production comes from fossil fuel plants, one of the assumptions could be that if I'm generating electricity, I'm actually replacing the electricity which has come from fossil fuel plants. Next is, I make a checklist of the various impacts from the various options. Now, one of the examples which I'm showing you here is for aerobic composting. I know that aerobic composting is going to consume electricity. So obviously there are, there is a potential for global warming. I also know that there are going to be certain emissions. I also know that the emissions actually correspond to various different potentials, like acidification potential, eutrophication potential, and there are actually data available which says that so much of ammonia corresponds to so much of this kind of potential. I'll come to that later. We can do this for all the possible options which we have found to be technically feasible in a particular scenario. And after that, there is literature available which will tell you that if you are using a certain kind of equipment, what is the likely consumption of fuel for that equipment. And there are several inventories available which will tell you as to how much emissions are there associated with a unit production of fuel. There are also inventories available to tell you if you are saving so much on a unit of electricity, how much emissions you are saving. So once you do that kind of an input-output analysis, and you do that for every possible option associated with that, like if you are generating leachate, you have an idea regarding the likely composition of the leachate. You know there is literature available telling you that this category of leachate is actually going to consume so much units of electricity, and so much toxic emissions are likely to be there from that. So once you are able to compile that, what you have to do is, that was the other problem, is that when I loaded the presentation here, the two last slides actually got deleted. So once you are able to identify for each option what are the possible impacts to various categories, then it is a simple case of addition and subtraction to arrive at an option which is going to be most desirable and carrying the least environmental burden. That is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
We'll take it at the end. Well, thank you. The next speaker is Dr. Vijayan from New Ecotex, and he'll speak on EcoPots garbage farms.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People have been telling waste, 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 but here I'll tell you it is a waste, wealth, food, and oxygen. This is a new technology. India has not invented many technologies. This is one of the few technologies that people will talk about in the long days to come. We are there to eliminate garbages from all cities in an easy way, in a low-cost manner. Our technology has got a gold medal from the Department of Science and Technology. So eliminating organic waste is our aim. Cities are increasing population. About 40% of the people are going to be living in cities, and the human population is going to go from 7 to 10 billions by 2050. We need to find food and also oxygen for these extra billions. The garbage waste is an environmental disaster, and it's also a financial disaster for most of the municipalities. Why do we create this waste? The waste is mostly organic. It putrefies, decomposes, produces smell and produces diseases. So we throw it into the streets, it is collected, and you see these mountains. So there is open trucks and other things. You need specialized heavy materials. These all consume a lot of diesel, give you a lot of carbon dioxide. And in the landfill, everybody has accepted there is no good treatment. They say about 5% is used for treatment, other things only for transport. So the land is getting degraded locally. There is a soil, air, water pollution. Unfortunately, this is an inappropriate solution for the 21st century. We can eliminate it in a simple way. People say, oh, you have to burn your waste, but waste is not energy dense. It will not give you too much of calories. Already you are spending too much of calories for transporting everything. And it is going to be a financial loss for the government in future. So people are saying about composting. Composting takes 3 months. My previous speaker certified it is 3 months. So there is no new good technology for composting. And this mechanical composters also no good. So what is our technology? So our technology is a dump technology. Just dump it and then forget about it. It has got a partition. There are a lot of holes. Through these holes, roots will go, take up the waste and grow well. So this divides the pot into 2 chambers. You put the waste in one chamber and cover it up with 1 to 2 inches of soil. That's all you need to do. It takes about 1 minute. By the time you carry your waste to your street floor, you can put it and raise a kitchen garden or a balcony garden or a rooftop. And the other one, you put the soil, you can put a seed or a plant. Water only this part. You don't need to water the waste part. And then you can have a roof garden. A 40 square foot is more than enough for each family. This is available in all the flats, all the homes. 40 square feet is nothing at all. 2 small balconies will be enough for you. 20 pots if you have, by 20th day, it decomposes. On the 21st day, you'll be putting the second layering in the first pot. So you can grow flowers, you can grow vegetables. You can see the rose, you can see the tulsi plant and tomatoes and the radish also at the bottom. So we have given this to Swaminathan Foundation in Chennai. They have also said it's good. It has been tested in the University of Texas. There the growth is good. There is no smell at all. These are the plants from photos from the USA. And what are the uses of this? This is a technology that will give you oxygen. All other technologies take a lot of oxygen, convert it into carbon dioxide, and spoil the environment. Whereas here, each plant can give you 1 to 2 liters of oxygen. If you have 20 plants, it will give you a lot of freshness. It will reduce your diseases. And then this is the only technology that can trap carbon dioxide. A seed is few milligrams, but a plant is nearly a kilo. So if all the plants or all the homes use this, we can do millions and tons of carbon dioxide elimination. So it gives you organic vegetables. All the vegetables you buy in a market or pesticide loaded, they will give you all diseases, including cancer, diabetes, everything. So after 30 days, you can get 5 to 10 rupees of vegetables from this system. And plants have electrostatic force, which deposit all the dust, so it can clean up your air also. And if you have a roof garden, your summer AC cost will go down. So what is the implementation cost? For a 20 pot, we are giving you for 3,500 rupees. That is very cheap. And after 1 month, if you can get 5 to 10 rupees, your return on investment is less than 2 years. And then if you include the happiness, oxygen, disease cost, it is less than 6 months. So the life of the pots is more than 5 years. And people are telling, we have no technology. All the ministers come, there is a technology. Bombay, they say they are spending 2,000 crores for a population of 1 crore. That is something about 2.5 million families. So they'll come to about 2,000 rupees. If they spend this 2,000 rupees for 2 years, they don't need to waste their money on recurring cost of manpower, and we can eliminate totally. In Chennai, we are spending about 4,000 millions. The total number of families is 2,000. So per family cost is 2,000. The government steps in, pays for 2 years, partly or finally, then after 3rd year, they don't need to waste at all. And if you use it after 2 months or 2 years, you will see the diseases are coming down because air pollution is less, you get your nutrition also, and then that cost also will goes down for your this thing. Why use this? First, we don't throw it out. It's a waste that's going to give you food and money, and then there's no need for collection if done on a mass way, and then it can create oxygen, it can remove carbon dioxide, and it can improve the food security of the country. Everybody wants food, it's going to be a problem for everybody. and it saves you on air pollution. It can increase longevity on a global scale. It can reduce global warming. These spots are good in subtropics and subtropics. These are the countries, most of the countries are in tropics and subtropics, and most of the population is in subtropics and subtropics. Air pollution maximal in tropics and subtropics. You can see that air pollution mostly in China and other things. That is because of industrialization. So plants remove the dust, they add oxygen, they remove carbon dioxide. So your deaths can decrease. There is what is called a malnutrition map, which is again tropics. From waste, you are going to get some amount of nutrition. And healthy, what is called chemical-free nutrition, that can increase your status of health and decrease your mortality. People are talking of global warming. Again, if it is done on a mass scale, definitely we can reduce or delay things. So the message is, there is a small 1 month of learning to nurture how to grow the plants up to the age of 6 inches height. After that, they'll grow by themselves. And then financing this garden 2,000 to 3,500 is not a big thing. People say they got a lot of money, and unfortunately, all the commissioners are missing now. Right. And very easy to monitor and execute. Execute, give the parts to every house, and then you go to Google Earth, see the rooftop. The rooftop is green, everybody is doing it properly. If it is brown, you can always tell them, oh, you are, and relearn them. So message is, waste is not waste, it will give you wealth because it gives you money every month and gives you food and oxygen now. Oxygenation is very, very important. By 2016 and 2017, oxygen levels are going to go down, and then the first affected will be the fishes in your rivers and your oceans, and all our children, probably other animals, asthmatic patients, cardiac patients, they will all have nobody is talking about decreasing oxygenation. Because the population is increasing, the cars are increasing, power plants are increasing, fossil fuels are increasing. So it is high time we oxygenate the earth. Plants alone trap carbon dioxide and oxygen. So it's a small cost, everybody can afford this home garden, and if the government wants, they can also join us. We are willing to collaborate. We want to make India garbage-free first country in the whole world. It's a technology invented by us. The patent has been granted by the PCT. I've also applied for US and UK, other countries, nations, and I'll be launching it in China in another 15 days. This is the separator. This is the actual pot. This is the actual pot. It is a very simple, recyclable, and it can last for 5 years. UV stabilized, it can last more than 5 years. You can get back your money in 2 years and have it free forever. We want to give nutrition to the world. Thank you.
Dr. Vijayan, I wish you had carried some sample pot. But the designing, it costs us now, because you are charging it, so it must be something specially designed.
There is a lot of specialties in that.
Oh,
That's
great.
why you got a patent. Otherwise, you won't get a patent for a pot.
That's very good home practice. Yes.
Landfills, I'm a bit confused. There is no landfills. Are you referring dump sites as landfills? Many areas were referring landfills in your presentation also. Are they landfills or open dump sites?
Just this is one question only, okay? Yeah, please answer that.
Then we have 3 landfill sites, so I was referring
I think I would like to support your observation of.
We'll take it at the end now.
Sure.
Yeah.
But there is a, this term landfill is being used with a great deal of indiscriminate. This landfill is a very respectable technological infrastructure. What you are calling landfill is basically an irresponsible open dumping. So kindly don't display your, whatever deficit by calling a dump a landfill.
No, there is a lot of connotation changes taking place over last 20 years. We'll come to that discussion later on, yes.
We want to eliminate
Yes. Now there are a lot of, there are geographical phenomena also very important in landfills. It's not only the present scientific terminology, okay? We'll discuss that. So next speaker is Dr. Professor V.K. Garg, and he's from University of Hisar, and vermicomposting and wastewater treatment plant, sludge, cow dung and weeds. Please.
A very good afternoon to all of you. The topic of my presentation is management of food industry waste. When I say food industry waste, I am talking about the sludge produced at the ETP of the food industries using vermicomposting technology. My presentation is having three parts basically. First, I'll be telling a bit about vermicomposting, then a result of one experiment, and third, what we are really doing in the field with farmers and industries and that all. So, as far as India is concerned, in India, food industries are coming at a very fast rate. And every food industry, almost every food industry is having a ETP, and in those ETP sludge is produced. And because of the prohibitive cost of sludge disposal, most of the industries, not only food industries, they dispose their waste either in the open dumps or in the agricultural field or sometime along the roadside or railway track. And sometime in the poorly designed sanitary landfill. A discussion has just now started over the landfills. And this all, if this sludge is disposed in this way, this may pollute groundwater, this may pollute our surface water bodies, this may be a nuisance also to the people due to its odor and leachate, etc., etc. This I already talked. Yes, these are the common methods which are reported in the literature for the disposal of industrial sludges. This may be landfilling, land spreading, composting, lime stabilization, thermal drying, and incineration. Now, if I come to the industrial scale, particularly with respect to the India, this sludge is managed by this destructive methods such as landfilling and incineration. But when we are doing landfilling or incineration of these sludges contains a number of nutrients which can be put to some good use. So if we are managing them by this landfilling or incineration, the nutrients which are present in those sludges will be lost forever. So now people are in the search of some alternate technologies. Several biological alternate technologies have been suggested, and vermicomposting is one of them. So if we do vermicomposting of our waste, we get two benefits. One is waste is managed, and on the other hand, a waste is converted into a value added product, that is vermicompost, and which can be used as a stabilizer or a humus for our agricultural fields. So when we do vermicomposting, that time we use two terms very commonly. I usually tell these people, one is called as vermicomposting and other is called as vermiculture. When we do vermicomposting, we get two products. One is compost and other one is earthworm. So when our main product is earthworms and secondary product is our this compost, that time the process is called as vermiculture. And when our main product is compost and secondary product is earthworms, that time the process is called as vermicomposting. Similarly, there are two terms which are very interchangeably used by people. One of them is worm casting and other one is vermicompost. Worm cast is nothing but the excreta of the earthworms. You all might have seen your lawns, in your gardens or in various parks, the small grains, heaps of small grains, that is called as worm cast. Whereas vermicompost contain everything, whatever you are taking for the vermicomposting, that may be worm casting, that may be bedding material, that may be organic matter, organisms, microorganisms, cocoons, etc. Now the question arises, why we go for vermicomposting? 2-3 reasons I have mentioned. This works on 3R principle, that is reduce, reuse, recycle of this waste management. This is non-polluting. And here we get a product, vermicompost, that can be used as a fertilizer or soil conditioner or manure in our agricultural fields. Yes. Now the question arises whether all kind of earthworms can be used for this process or not. There are about 4,200 species of earthworms present on this earth, and about 520 species of earthworms are present in India, but all species cannot be used for the purpose of vermicomposting. Out of these 520 which I am talking about India, only 20 species can be used for the purpose of vermicomposting, and most of the earthworms which can be used for the purpose of vermicomposting, they belong to the first group, that is epigeic earthworms. Yes, these are some of the characteristics which earthworm species should have. The first one is very important, that is the wide adaptability to the environmental factors, and I will talk about two environmental factors. One is temperature and second one is moisture. And out of these two also temperature is very, very important. If you come to the northern India, here in summer temperature will go somewhere near 47 degrees Celsius, and in winter temperature will go somewhere near 2 degrees Celsius. So we need a worm species which can survive in this temperature range. If you talk about the common earthworm species of this area, the common earthworm species of this area is Pheretima faustuma. that is having a very small temperature range, so that species cannot be used for the purpose of vermicomposting. Yes, this one is also very important, that the worm should have high feeding rate and high productivity rate. Yes, these are the common vermicomposting species, and out of these, the first one is used in northern India. In addition to this Euryalus eugenie at number 3 and number 4, these two species are also used, but these are used in other parts of the country. In northern India, this Acinna foetida is used. Yes, mostly people think that vermicomposting means everything is done by the worms, whereas I explain vermicomposting is just like a ring circus, and this earthworm is just like the ringmaster. In the vermicomposting, a number of things are involved. There are mites, there are planarians, there are centipede, millipedes, isopods, bacteria, mold, fungi. These all make the environment hospitable for the earthworms. If these are not present, earthworms will not be able to do anything. So these make the environment hospitable for the earthworms, and rest of the things are done by the worms. Yes, this is the picture of Acinna foetida, which we are using for our experiments. These are different stages of the development. The small grain over there, that is called as cocoon. Yes, leave this. And now I'm coming to my experiment. In this experiment, we took sludge from the wastewater treatment plant of the Parle industry, which is located in Haryana, and that was mixed with different bedding materials, cow dung, biogas plant slurry, some weeds, etc., poultry dropping. Here I'll be presenting the results of only one experiment due to time limitation. Whenever we do vermicomposting experiments, usually we do two kind of studies. One are related with the physico-chemical characteristics of the waste and the vermicompost, which are very important. And second, we do on the growth and reproduction or fecundity of the earthworms. The parameters I have shown here, in which we are particularly interested. Now come back to this. Yes, these are the details of the experiments. Basically what we did, we prepared 10 vermi bins. Each was containing the different composition of the sludge plus other bedding material, either it was the cow dung or it was the biogas plant slurry, or this was some weeds plus biogas plant slurry or cow dung mixture. Like that we prepared a number of beds. I want to mention here that the addition of this other bedding material is essentially, as this sludge is not the primary food of the earthworms, so they will not be start feeding on the sludge immediately. This may take some time. And when we take this cow dung, it should be free from urine, because if urine is present in the waste, this may lead to production of ammonia, and ammonia may be toxic to the earthworms. This is the detail. Okay, so these vermi bins were kept at room temperature, somewhere 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, with about 60 to 80% moisture, covered with a jute cloth to avoid the pests, for 15 weeks, and then the physico-chemical characteristics of the vermicompost so obtained were monitored. So these are the initial physico-chemical characteristics of the feed mixtures which we have taken for the purpose of vermicomposting. And these are the characteristics of the vermicompost which we have obtained. So in nutshell, I would like to tell that what kind of changes were there. pH was reduced after vermicomposting. Electrical conductivity of the vermicompost was higher than the initial waste. This increase in electrical conductivity may